Ahoy, hello. My name is Aria Evans. I am the Metcalf Artistic Director Intern here at Soulpepper Theatre, and I am also the programmer for our community conversations. And we are situated in Dagarondo on Dish with One Spoon territory. Community conversations are happening all season long in tandem to each of our shows. This community conversation celebrates Kamloopa, and it will be dialogue between Indigenous femmes who are breaking stereotypes through the work that they are doing. And community conversations could not be possible without the support of TD Ready Commitment, so miigwech to them. Valaliak for joining us. Hello to our virtual audience. We're so happy to have you here. We have Serene Fox, who is a celebrated dancer. That's how I know you first. Choreographer, activist, and television host. And we have Alexandra Lazarevich, who's an award-winning filmmaker. And I've had the pleasure of working with both of you on creative projects, and I'm really excited for our virtual audience to get a chance to know a little bit about what you do, and also hopefully to laugh along with us.
There will be laughing.
There will be no laughing. I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves briefly, however makes sense for you in this moment.
Bojo wabadanango kwen disnakas wabazashi and dodam anishinaabe kwen dao bachawana and donjaba ni soma dewian. That's how I introduce myself. I like to just leave it like that. I used to translate it all and kind of break it down, but now I just leave it as is. So that's who I am.
Hi, I'm Alex Lazarevich, and I am Cree, and I'm originally from northern Alberta, but currently live here in the Big Smoke.
To start us off, one of the things that I loved when I first read the Governor General Award-winning script by Kim Senklip Harvey was how we get to see a different perspective of Indigenous folks. This is an urban Indigenous story, and we get to see characters who at their core are just trying to figure out who they are. And I open this question up to both of you. Why do you do what you do, and how does your indigeneity inform that work?
Well, I think, from the work that I do as like a documentarian and then also as a filmmaker who makes sort of experimental art, the project that you were a part of, I think that like the indigeneity aspect of it is like so intertwined in like who I am and who I was growing up. And it has informed me as like a human, and as a person who exists in space and community. But it has informed sort of my art making practice in the sense that, the reason that I wanted to become a film director and a film producer was to challenge what was being made by other people, especially when what was being made by non-Indigenous people. And I think, I'm an older person in sort of like a mid-career space. And that was something that I think a lot of us were trying to rebel against, I think, because there was so much stuff that was being made, whether that was in like the theater space or film space or in the documentary space. And so it sort of became a rebellion to be like, no, we're going to tell the stories the way that we want them to be told and in how we were raised in community. And I think it brings up a lot of questions, especially like in the documentary world, that become questions around whose stories do you get to tell? What is the level of participation of someone who you're filming with? What is consent in these situations? Should there be an exchange of goods and or cash at this point? Because for a long time in the documentary world, it was really frowned upon that you would pay anybody for anything, which actually goes against, everything that I was taught growing up about how we sort of negotiate with each other, even with people from different communities. There was always an exchange of something, whether that was food, whether that was a smoke, whether that was tobacco, or whether that was actually like gas for someone helping you out. And so that has always been a big part of the larger and broader conversation of how do you introduce Indigenous ideas and Indigenous ways of community and existing and practices, cultural practices, into spaces that were really white and that had rules that were specific specifically very white and colonial. And I think that was a big part of the work that I make, is trying to deconstruct all of those things and figure out how we exist on screen when it's our own people who get to drive the story, tell the story, and be a part of the conversation.
Amazing. Miigwech for that. I was just like listening. I'm like, yes. And I think similarly for me in my practice, I was raised by an activist mom who really, fought to reclaim her culture. She, in these streets in Toronto, as an urban Indigenous person, was like literally trying to find her stories and connection to the land while being here. And so I think unlike her experience growing up, where she was silenced and, wasn't able to talk about who she was or be out, and then she became this woman who, became a mother and started raising children to be out and proud. And I'm the youngest of 3 girls, so I think I benefited the most from all of that. I had really rebel-rousing sisters who were just like, they paved the way for me. But I think, it's narrative shifting. Like, we were raised to rebel against everyone else's idea of who we are, and not even who we were, who we are. And I'm a product of residential schools and all of the policy and trauma that has been inflicted against Indigenous people. And the way that you see that is not by looking back at the schools in my family. It's looking at how we ended up in the cities, and how my grandfather came to drink at the Native Center and then also be a part of ceremony and then also be on those streets. And I think it's like, we're told not to bring these things up, that you're supposed to keep this part out of the conversation and only speak from this place and lift up all the things you're doing. But for me, the work that I do and the reason that I do it is because all of my truth has been what I was supposed to bury. And in fact, it's our truth that our young people need to see and hear more than ever. And the only way they see it is if we are telling our own stories. We are using our own bodies to represent who we are on stage and in spaces that matter. And if our voices are the only ones leading, and then we need to go and eliminate all of the lies. I think we're talking a lot about truth, but we need to pull all of the history books and all of the things we're talking about that we've been rebelling against out now, so that the only thing that can exist is all of our creations, your films and your dances and, all of that. So that's what inspires me to just make that reality happen. Yeah.
Seraine, when we were talking about this panel, one of the things that you said that really struck me was how you use your teachings to engage with others. And because our nations are all so diverse and we have different teachings, and sometimes those teachings are in conflict with one another, how do you navigate your values when you're doing your advocacy work?
This is a really important question, Aria. Thank you. And I think I have to start by saying that I was raised in the Medewan Lodge. I was raised really traditional, and for a long time, I was very careful about how I didn't even tell anyone. It was almost like something, not that I was embarrassed of, but something that I was shy of. And it took me many years to realize that I actually was afraid of being seen or othered by my own communities. Like, you're not supposed to know enough, but you're not supposed to not know. And also because it's an incredibly privileged thing to have your teachings, to have your name and to know your creation story and to know your songs. And as a young person, I think I had to learn how to navigate that in a really careful way, because you can actually do a lot of harm with how you use what you know. So for me, it's like access and accessibility and what we know is so important to community. And being able to show up as we are and respect each other as we are is so important to how we engage in community. And I've learned through experience that we all are arriving in different places, and that's so beautiful. and we have to share openly with no restrictions everything we have. That means also letting young people show up as they are. That means letting people show up to ceremonies maybe they've been using, but maybe them showing up in that way is the first step to them getting clean. Like, we need to reimagine all of the ways that we are in space with our teachings, and just make them there, available, you know? So I think that's been a journey that I'm still really working towards every day, of just like, how do I make sure that kindness and integrity is at the root of everything I do?
Yeah, I think approaching everything from kindness is all we can do from the base to be the thing that continues us forward together. Alex, when we spoke, the thing that stood out to me was the conversation about how, with stories that fit into a diversity quota for larger organizations who have a lot of infrastructure, they're still not willing to take risks on new work, and especially work that subverts storytelling styles. I'm really curious about our industry's colonial and violent attachment to the notion of white excellence. But what would you encourage folks to consider when looking to program work by Indigenous creators?
Ugh, that's a good question.
Oh. No, I think right now, at this like very specific moment in time, there are so many opportunities for Indigenous folks to create things, or just generally artists across the board. We have so much support from the Indigenous Screen Office. We have so much support from Telefilm. We have so much support from the Canada Arts Council. And so there's many ways for artists to get their work made right now. And all of those, you can see the doors opening, but the door isn't fully open. And what I think a lot of us are in conversation with amongst each other is just how far we can get the door open, because there seems to be this risk adverseness to telling Indigenous stories, whether that's in the theater space, on TV, in movies and documentaries, and it comes down to, you know, like you said, deconstructing the idea of what a film should look like, what a theater production should look like. It's not 3 acts. It's not, a lead character who is likable. Like, all of these things of like what the idea of, maybe this goes back to what you were saying too, is like the idea of who we were and are is still so deeply ingrained in people who are not Indigenous. And I would also say that for even some Indigenous people, they have believed the things that have been told about us, and they can't see it another way. And so it's a thing of working with, you know, the artists and being like, okay, so what's your vision? What's your vision? What's your story? And how can we support those ideas and those projects to get made? And it's one of the steps that, you know, the diversity quota is here, and it's great. You know, I'm a diverse person. I'm clearly benefiting from it. But
No.
yeah, right? Like, but at the same time, it's like this sort of levels of, well, how many boxes do we need to check? How many people need to be a part of this? What levels of power do people have? And I think what we're often seeing, and I think the bigger conversation is, yes, we're being welcomed into the room, but do we have strong Indigenous people at the top who are the people who ultimately get to make the decisions about what gets made? No, we don't. And so until those people want to loosen the grip on their power and allow other people, and that includes all BIPOC people and all people who have not had the same opportunity that a bunch of folks have over the years and up until this point, it's like that's still the barrier that we're all facing. And it becomes really problematic, because at what point, you know, can you have an idea and it get turned down over and over and over again? And I feel like what's happening is people who are extremely talented are not getting the opportunities to make the things that they want to make, and they leave the industry, and we lose their voice. And we lose their voice, we lose their perspective, we lose their point of view. And then not only that, we lose the sort of Indigenous inclusion, right? Like, they're from a very specific community and have a specific storytelling style. And it's like, we lose that person if they keep hearing the word no over and over and over again by the people who are at the top who are not Indigenous. And so it's something that is intangible, because we lose it collectively as a community, and then we lose it as, like, you know, people from Canada who don't get to witness this very specific experience and storytelling idea. And I think that's a huge loss. And I can see it happening where people just are giving up, and it's not fair.
I'm going to shift us a little bit. So, this conversation is also about Indigenous joy and celebration, and Kamloopa is a comedy. And I want to come back. I want to like circle around through the humor that like allows us to heal, that gets us back to why we're doing what we're doing. And as a like fun middle of the conversation blip, I am curious if either of you have a like, I can't believe this happened story about like being backstage or on set, and like no spoilers. But for example, during our tech run of Kamloopa, in the middle of the show, there's a scene where like cheesies get thrown around, and like the sisters have this like wild night where they throw Cheerios all over the apartment, and they're drinking, and it's like they're just making a huge mess, which is so satisfying to see, like Indigenous women just being messy. Without judgment attached to it.
Literally messy.
Literally messy.
With things.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for that clarification.
Like
and in the middle of a tech rehearsal, we had a mouse jump out of our couch on stage.
Because they were so excited that you were being messy. They were like, a feast finally for me.
But like, we were all just like, what the actual F? And I just can't believe that happened. And like the animal ancestors are definitely invited into this piece. And I was like, that mouse is someone's little animal ancestor coming to say hi. But it was just absolutely ridiculous. And I'm curious if either of you have ever had like a super wild, weird experience. That's a good story.
This one's kind of just like ridiculous because it makes me like a bad Indian. Yeah.
Can't have that.
So we were rehearsing. We had been rehearsing all summer. It was like a big summer in Toronto. The Pan Am Games were here. And so there was all kinds of, programming happening. We decided Fort York was going to be the new place for all of our events because putting the natives in a fort is, of course, what you should do. So it was that year. And we were rehearsing like a really incredible piece. And it was actually the first summer that I also decided on the same roster to do my first full-length piece as well. For any artists out there, I don't suggest doing that. Signing up to dance and create in the same show. It's wild. But anyways, so I decided one weekend that I would go out and do a small shoot for Manitoba Mucklucks. This was the beginning of my quote-unquote influencing career. I like to call it infiltrating. That's what it really is. But so I went out on the weekend with my good friend, and we did a photo shoot. And, I went right down there in the grass and had my feet up, beautiful, doing pictures. We only found out a few days later after viewing the pictures, and when I broke out head to toe in poison ivy, that I was blissfully laying in an entire field of it. Which is fine, like a total normal summer thing, unless you're doing a piece with like 4 other women, and maybe Ari and I have to do like a bunch of holding of one another and lifting.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you even remember, but
that was When Will You Rage? I remember.
Yeah, I was full of poison ivy blisters, and everybody I danced with had to just break them open as we were dancing.
And you're such a trooper because you went on.
Oh, yeah,
and
I just
did
it. I had to, but it was one of those moments, unlike the mouse, where it was like I had done this thing and I was experiencing this wild personal moment. But in theater, in the arts, it's like anything that's happening to you becomes, your whole family. And so everyone had to just, whether we liked it or not, that's what we were doing. So I don't know. I always think of that moment. And that photo gets shared by Manitoba like once every summer. And I'm like, why does no native look at that photo and be like, she's laying in poison ivy, get her out of there?
That's a crazy story.
I feel like there should be a Manitoba Mucklucks warning, be like, this is how you should learn about poison ivy, and turn it into a teaching moment rather than just get rid of it.
A PSA. I could probably sell this to the Ontario government.
Exactly.
Actually, if you're watching.
I thought it was going to be about ticks, but poison ivy, whew, damn. Yeah, I just don't have them in my memory recall. I'm just messy all the time. And so I'm really good at my job because my job involves not being messy, but like the rest of my life is a disaster. You know what I mean? But like, you know, that's the thing of being an artist is like the focus goes to doing all of this like work. But like, you know, the rest of my life is very messy. So it's an interesting catch-22, I think. And I think there's maybe this like false belief that like, you know, if you're very successful or whatever, looks good on Instagram, that you have your life together. And I can guarantee you do not have your life together.
I can guarantee you if you're an Indigenous artist, we're the only population that doesn't have access to capital. So
yes, exactly.
None of us have our shit together. By the way, if you're also a member of a hedge fund and watching, Indigenous people need capital. It's the number one way for us to get around the door closing.
Yes.
Sorry.
I love that this is just becoming an infomercial.
I'm
I'm
getting
here for it. I'm here for all of it. But I will. No, it's great. And I agree, though. Like, we are not monolithic in any sense of like who we are and what we do, and that is true in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. I want to circle back around to like where you had landed in this like very passionate place of advocating for representation. And I think about the generations that have paved the way for us and where we are now and the idea of being an ancestor in the making. And when it comes to breaking down harmful stereotypes, what do the two of you want to be a part of for carving the future that we're walking into? Your eyes just got so big.
Such a deep question. And also I've never
answer it on the top.
I've never thought about it like that, like the ancestor in the making stuff. Like I feel like definitely my personal perspective was always trying to figure out how to leverage the opportunities that were given to me to increase that for other people who were coming behind me or who hadn't had the opportunity yet. And that was such a big part of, you know, like I'm part of a collective called Cousin Collective, and we created a collective for experimental Indigenous artists. And we distribute funds to people every year, every 2 years. And we have like artist sponsorships. And I think what we did as a group is we realized that we had been given a lot of opportunity and we needed to figure out how to allow other community to have access to the opportunity that we had. And that was a really big part of sort of even just in my own personal filmmaking and, you know, reaching out to people and trying to incorporate them into something that they may have never had the opportunity to be a part of. And I think that's sort of the best way that I've been able to figure out how to do that in practice, and that, you know, you're not the only person at the table eating alone. And that's something that has, you know, goes back to, you know, what my mom taught me and how we grew up. And not only that, like that goes back to like my Ukrainian heritage too. They were farmers and it was like whoever's at the table, you come and eat. And I think that's something that I think a lot about. And like when you speak of the ancestor stuff, it's so interesting because I feel like with COVID, it reinforced this idea of our communities have dealt with a lot of loss in the past 3 years. And every one of us has experienced stuff that I think the general public had no idea what was happening in our communities in regards to COVID and people getting sick. And, you know, I've talked to my mom a lot about this, is my mom has attended a lot of funerals in the past 2 years and losing elders and losing people who are really important to the community. And so I think that's very top of mind in my own sort of work that I'm trying to carve out for the future is, you know, post-COVID, what do we do and how do we deal with the tremendous amount of loss of language, of people who knew things about medicine picking, even just about community support. You know, the person who was always at the powwow and was cheering everybody on and had the biggest cooler and had all the water for all the kids who don't have any money. Or, you know, there was always the one auntie who always had like $5 to give out to all the kids if they wanted to go get a lemonade. And it's like, what happens when we lose those people? Who steps into these roles to be that for the next generation? And I think it's become something that I've thought a lot about, and not just about myself, but what that means like with my cousins and what that means with a bigger extended family that you have. And so it's just really interesting that what you said is like, I've never thought of it like that, but it's not something that I haven't not thought about, because I think the loss part for these past 2 years and past 3 years has been really hard. And I'm not sure how we collectively deal with that as a community.
I think they have to go home.
Mm-hmm.
As you were talking, and you were mentioning like the one auntie, or, the person who's always there. One of the things that I realized in my own life is like back home in community, it's like I have my auntie and I go and stay at her house, and she's the one who plans the reunion and connects all the cousins, and more people leave. I realize that there's going to be no one at home. Like pretty soon there's going to be no one at home for me to go and see in that same way. And with the housing crisis and shortage, like that's why young families are leaving. And so even if I imagine going home, it's like, it can't be so crazy for all of us to imagine going home. Like it seems like the end of a career if you go home. Yet if some of us don't start going home, there's going to be nothing for anyone. Like we are the people that our communities need, the people who the city needs the most, the people who are working the most, the people who are being seen the most. That's who our communities need, and we're so busy. Yeah, so I'm like always walking in this weird like, who the fuck am I giving this to? Like who's getting all of this? And do they deserve it? Like do these big corporate entities deserve the life energy that could be saving my own community? I think about it all the time.
Big questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the ancestor space does for me. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go home.
I have to go home.
It's coming too fast.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it makes
coming
me
too
think
fast.
about like the journeys of reconnecting and what that looks like and what home means, and how we carve our own version of home, but how we also return to a place that was home before. It's like a beautiful sentiment. I wanted to shout out some of the incredible work that you're both doing, because we don't need a we don't need a humble native. Alex, I think if you just want to share a little bit about these two projects, however makes sense to you. I wanted to shout out Still Standing season 8, but also your romantic comedy.
I think, this is a good like duality thing, is like, so I work on Still Standing, which is in our 8th season now, and it's a CBC show hosted by Johnny Harris, and I work as a series producer. So I am the person who, helps cast the towns and helps pick the stories. And I think what I love about working on this show is we often get to go to Indigenous communities and tell stories that aren't just about, sadness and loss, because our show is a comedy show, but it's also a documentary show. So oftentimes we get to highlight communities that like the general broad public of people who watch our show are, not Indigenous people, that's for sure, and not young people, but we get to inform Canadians about like what it looks like to be from an Indigenous community, to be from an African American community in Nova Scotia, what it's like to live in the North. And I think being able to tell those stories with comedy and like interesting parts of people's lives is the part that I really enjoy the most, and I think is allowing for people who are non-Indigenous and probably not BIPOC to have a different understanding of the reservation that they've maybe lived 5 kilometers away from, but have never been to in their entire lives. And I think that's why I enjoy the show so much and why I'm still working on it. And, the comedy space, and I think this ties back to the theater production, is I think comedy is the thing that I remember about home is how much laughter there is in the spaces that we exist in. And like, our family is huge, so many cousins, so many, aunties. And like when we go to a restaurant, we get shushed by other people because we are so loud and they're laughing so hard, or we're laughing so hard. And so I think it's something that's tied to this very specific memory of like my family and my community, is how much laughter and joy there is. And I think that's also the biggest disconnect that I'm seeing with some stories that are getting told, is like there's so much grief and sadness. And I'm like, but there's also laughter and there is joy in going back home. And so that's a part of the romantic comedy I wrote, you know, that is just, it was about capturing the essence of that you can go home for a funeral and you can still laugh and grieve at the same time. And that has always been a part of every time I go home, that's it. And it's because me and all the women are cooking 400 turkeys for the wake. You know what I mean? And none of us know how to
family
cook.
reunion.
Yes,
the funeral is the family reunion.
Exactly. The only time that people go home nowadays, especially if you live in the city, especially if you're sort of removed from your family and your community, you go home for a wedding, and you know natives don't get married that often. No offense. And then you go home for the funerals, and you go home for the wake, and that's when you're going home, and it becomes bigger than that. And ultimately, it's the family reunion, and that's when you get to see your cousins. That's when you get to see who had a new baby. That's when you get to learn all the gossip. You know what I mean? And it's something more. It's about food. It's about love and sharing, and you know, I think that's something that is still missing from a lot of the work that is sort of being watched by people who are non-Indigenous. And that's why they should come see this play, because comedy and indigeneity and I think, you know, living in the city or living in like an urban space, these are all real things that we are all experiencing at the same time. And it's unique and it's fun and, you know, it's intertwined in who we are. And like, there was a great quote and it's like, laughter is just like joy bubbling beneath your soul, basically. And I love that because that's exactly what it is. And it can bubble up at any moment, you know? All of us had those moments when you're like, God, if I don't laugh right now, I'm going to start sobbing and I won't stop crying for 2 weeks. And you just laugh and it releases something in your body and it releases something. And I think, you know, when the creator looks down upon us and he sees us laughing, it's a blessing that we get to be so joyful. Yeah. So, you know, I work in comedy, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe we should even stop calling it comedy. Like maybe it's the genres that are like, because we just are.
Yeah.
Like I've never met an Indigenous person who doesn't like the darkest, most stoic native who like is wearing full Metallica and like combat boots, long hair, you know, slightly greaser. They're going to like make fun of something almost immediately. Yeah. And you're going to think they'll never speak to you. And the first thing that they do will just be like something. And it's usually like really dark or
but it also connects
something.
us.
Yeah. It is
the
us.
Breaking connects us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so apparent in all the content, right? Like everything is it's trauma informed. And if you really want to be trauma informed, then it's humor leading.
Yeah.
Humor leading.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Me too. That's mine. I just made it up. I'm just
okay.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
TM. Trademark. Well, this is a great opportunity, Serene, for you to talk about the documentary that you're working on that is unraveling precolonial queerness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Oh, thanks also for shouting it out. I can't really say like too much about all of the things, but concept-wise, definitely. This is my whole mission right now in everything. I think that our young people are actually engaged in conversations about shedding things, and even like the whole conversation around pronouns, which is so important and valuable, but it's all happening in this context of what was brought here. None of these conversations are happening like pre-contact, you know? So we have young people who are like questioning like, well, what is my role in this? And how do I use all of these, like, for lack of a better word, white identifying words, English, colonial concepts to define my Indigenous spirit, like even two-spirit? No one has really even translated that. Like, instead of saying it in our own languages, whatever that means, we just say two-spirit. And so we even label ourselves with a colonial concept. And I'm not tearing that down. I think that is beautiful. Like, everything that I'm imagining right now is, how do we think of ourselves as pre-contact, which is like the original narrative? Like, how do I see my queerness if I listen to my creation story? And what if I listen to my creation story in my language and just let my spirit hear it and really believe that I've heard it? You know, not think, oh, I heard it in the language, so I don't understand it, but like really believe that I'm carrying my teachings. And so if I believe I'm carrying my teachings, then doesn't that mean that there are two-spirit teachings, that there are teachings that I don't even know the names of yet, that describe how beautiful we are? So I think really in this documentary, but in everything I'm doing right now, it's like I just want to strip down all of the colonial violence that has taught us that we're not beautiful from the source, and just remind us all that we are beautiful from the source, like from that great, great, great darkness that in my creation story takes 4 days just to talk about the darkness. And even that, when we talk about, like, this is my mom's whole thing. My mom's always saying this, and it used to like really, drive me crazy when I was growing up, but now I get it. It's like we even think of darkness as dangerous. The darkness is bad, It's like in the darkness you'll find what's creepy and scary. And when you think of that, even if you flip it on race, all of that has been on purpose. We've been taught that the darker things are, the more afraid we should be. And that's not our way at all. In fact, in the darkness is the great mystery. It's where all of the most beautiful, all of the spark of creation, everything we have comes from the darkness, and makes its way to the light. So it's just like we have to remind ourselves that we are all carrying, even those people who say we're so decolonized, we are all living and carrying the weight of colonization. It's our responsibility to like rip it out of our being. And so in the queer space, I think it's terrifying. There's so much fear around talking about any of this. And it's even scary for me. I think I don't ever want to make someone feel like how they identify or what they have or what they hold is wrong. But we haven't, as Indigenous people, ever been allowed or been given the space to have these conversations. Not without anyone coming in and being like, you're this or you're that or you're that. It's like, well, can't we just like be curious? Like, what if we redefine it? What if we don't use any of that stuff? What if our queerness is our own thing and our own ceremonies? And it already is, but let's find it. So anyways, that's my blab.
It makes a difference though. Like I remember walking into the rehearsal room for Kamloopa and just seeing like Indigenous femmes and non-binary folks behind the table, in front of the table, telling their stories. And that is something that we need more of. And we're all doing that in our own ways. And that is a reminder to come see Kamloopa.
It's true. Come see Kamloopa.
Come see Kamloopa. And to just say that this brings us to the end of our community conversation, Healing with Humor. Chimigwech Walaliok for being here with me, and to our audience for watching. We look forward to continuing community conversations all season long. The next one looks at current adaptions that unpacks Queen Goneril and King Lear. Do either of you have any way that people can connect or get in contact or learn more about the work that you're doing?
It's just social media is the best way. It's at Serene Fox everywhere. Shameless.
Everywhere. Alex.
Shameless. Well, tune into CBC Still Standing. No.
On CBC Gem.
On CBC Gem, streaming now live. You can find me also on social media. And, check out what's happening, with your work. I know that you've had some work coming up too. So
that's true. Yeah, Arya, what are you doing?
What are you working on?
For another conversation.
You're too Indigenous folks to be like, by the way, we talk about you now.
We got a wrap.